industrial revolution have universities come under critical scrutiny. Across the globe, universities as places of higher learning have been seriously challenged to learn and even unlearn their ways of doing and being as not just producers of knowledge. In the foreword of the uses of the university, American author Clark Kerr, the first chancellor of the University of California, Berkeley, underscored the mammoth importance of universities in shaping knowledge, which he believed is their invisible product. In fact, Kerr held that knowledge is perhaps, quote, the most powerful single element in our culture, affecting the rise and fall of professions and even of social classes, of regions, and of nations. Program administrators and educators, he argued, need to carefully reflect on how our practices shape the knowledge economy in the university, or what he termed the new ideopolis, because our textual productions have a bearing on the quality of life. For example, the knowledge universities produce is significant for raising the intellectual tone of society, at cultivating the public mind, at purifying the national state, at facilitating the exercise of political powers, and refining the intercourse of private life. Yet, producing knowledge that emanates from the proverbial ivory tower, all by ourselves as academics, is no more tenable in an AI-driven dispensation. Academics are ab initio, therefore, not isoglosses. This means that the gowns we don must now, more than ever, go to town. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may it be known that the Gown and Town series, GTS for short, was originally conceived by the Dean of the Faculty of Arts of our noble university, Professor Kwabena Safo Kantanka. Yes, you want to do it better. In collaboration with the Chief Executive Officer of the National Petroleum Authority, Honorable Dr. Mustafa Abdulhamid, who is right here. So thank you very much for the initiative. SICA, October 2022. Although academics continually engage in community extensions, it has been recognized over the years that the ecosystems within which these desired partnerships are nurtured yield little results. Thus, the myth that persists outside the walls of the academy is that the majority of intellectuals are comfortable subsisting in the ivory tower and in effect show little interest in the matters of the polis. The overarching goal of the Gown and the Town series, therefore, is to make available opportunities for industry and academy to engage in useful conversations with each other. The telos would be to address head-on perceptions of society concerning the role of industry and academy in the Ghanaian society in particular and the world at large. Organizers of GTS intend GTS to be a praxis-based advocacy that will harvest reflexive conversations among scholars, university administrators, vis-a-vis industry players, with a view to harnessing practical solutions to teething problems confronting society. Viewed this way, GTS has been set up as an all-encompassing inter-transdisciplinary platform that will dissect both contemporaneous as well as diachronic issues confronting the Ghanaian and African societies. Issues to be addressed, we envisage, are myriad, ranging from quotidian societal issues, education and social welfare, governance and politics, culture and religion, science and technology, security and global affairs, etc., etc. Prof. Chair, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude by acknowledging the active participation of all committee members of the Gown and Town series. Viz. Dr. Vitus Nambigini of the Department of Theatre and Films. Can you please give us a wave, Dr. Nambigini? Dr. John Doe Dodgero of the Department of Music and Dance. Thank you so much for your contribution. Dr. Eva Kwansa of the Center for African and International Studies, who is our coach MC, and Dr. Emmanuel Anderson Jr., George Emmanuel Anderson, George Anderson Jr., and finally, our faculty officer for the Faculty of Arts, Mr. Raymond Bentel. I end by noting that GTS is envisaged to be held at least once every semester, and that it is our hope that the series will move beyond being just a talk shop to becoming a site for actionable deliverables with tangible academia community outcomes. Thank you so much, and may God bless us all.
Thank you very much. At this point, we would invite Dr. Vitus Nambigne on stage to come and introduce to us the chairperson for today's occasion.
Thank you, Dr. Kwansa. My job is easy. You know, I have a knack for picking up the easiest jobs on such occasions. So thank you. The chairman for today's function is known to most of us. He's a very friendly officer, a servant leader, very humble, and someone with bigger ears than a mouth, if you know what I mean. He is someone who listens more than talks. I've also noticed that he is someone who is action-oriented. He doesn't just say things, but he wants things to be done. And this person is our own Dean of the Faculty of Arts, my own personal friend, and a friend to most of us in this room. Please help me to welcome, with a round of applause, Professor Kwabena Safo Kantanka.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nambigne. Become the convention, so let me also associate myself with the protocol already established and go straight to issues. Thank you once again to you all making it here. I'm happy as the dean of the faculty because I represent everyone. So I'm doing the faculty. I'm very much happy that today we gather here to start this program. Well, Chair said the idea was originally mooted by me, but I'll explain how it happened. Somewhere last year, I found myself in the office of the CEO of the National Petroleum Authority, that's Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid, and we had a lengthy conversation. And at a point in time, he said that he did a presentation at a place. I think is it the Army Command? Yes. And after the presentation, he realized that a lot of people didn't understand, didn't know a lot of things about what the NPA does. And so in the course of it, then why don't we do something at the faculty, maybe? And he actually came up with the title, The Gown and the Town series. So the credit goes to him. And of course, I have been the implementer. So that is how it happened. So I took it upon myself when I came back. I discussed it with colleagues at the board meeting, and everybody thought that it was a good program. And so we set up a committee to be in charge of it. And fortunately, the committee has worked so hard. We are here this afternoon having this program. What else can I say except to say that I am happy, you are happy, we are all happy to be here. And I'm wondering if I should say I won't be the chair, then that will mean that everybody else will have to leave. Because if it's your own program and you are chairing, then it means you have to sit in the chair. So I take up that mantle as the chair of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dean. As we can see, we have other dignitaries on stage. So we call on Dr. Nambingne again to let us know other dignitaries on stage, so that when we meet them, we'll be able to call them by their names. So Dr. Nambingne, the microphone is yours again.
Here I come again. It's getting complicated, eh? All right, I will try. I will manage. Okay, so my job here is to acknowledge some important personalities in our midst. That's not to say that the rest of us are not important. You are all important. Give a hand for yourselves. Yes, you're all VIPs. Without you, there will be no Gown and Town series. Okay, but let me start by acknowledging the presence of Faisal Ibrahim Sise, who is the Executive Assistant to the Chief Executive Officer of the NPA. Please give us a wave if you are here. There you go. Okay. We also have Michael Opoko Obiri, who is the Central Regional Manager of the NPA. Can we see you? Oh, okay. I didn't see him myself, so. Then we have Abbas Tasumti, who is the head of economic regulation of the NPA. Thank you very much for your presence. Saeed Obeidallah Kutia is here. He is the head of quality assurance of the NPA. Good. Yeah. If you buy fuel and it's not good, look for him. Okay. We have Mohammed Kudus, not the footballer. And Mohammed Kudus is the head of communications of the NPA. Yeah. He's my own brother that I didn't know. He just found me and introduced himself. Thank you for connecting. Yeah. We have, of course, you all know Mr. Vincent Asamfu, Dr. Vincent Asamfu, who gave us the opening prayer. Yeah, in the name of Jesus Christ, but also Muhammad, may he rest in peace. Yeah, our most highly respected VIP is a Muslim. So when we pray, we must consider all, right? Yes. Professor Koda is here. Professor Koda is the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Arts. Another very hard-working individual. Thank you, Prof. And we have Professor Kumitreme, who is the Dean of the School of Social Sciences. And he is here to represent the Provost. Thank you, Prof. Faculty of Social Sciences, yeah. Okay. Of course, our own Dean has been introduced, but let's give him a round of applause again. Yeah. After honoring him with this applause, I'm going to his office for a bottle of star beer. All right. We have our very hard-working faculty officer, Mr. Raymond Bentel. Thank you, FO, for all the hard work. Finally, I have the singular honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker, our guest of honor, my own personal friend, coffee drinking mate. Oh, you didn't know that. I know you didn't know. Say again. Okay. I am told that this introduction has to wait for a while because it's special. So we have a musical interlude.
Wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount with wings like eagles. They shall walk and not be wearied. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. But they that wait, but they that wait, but they that wait upon the Lord, shall renew their strength. But they that wait, but they that wait, but they that wait upon the Lord, shall renew their strength. So wait on the Lord. So wait on the Lord. He will guard and uphold you. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. So wait on the Lord. So wait on the Lord. He will guide and uphold you. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength.
You never gave a promise that the journey will be easy. Your grace and mercy has brought me thus far. Your grace and mercy, it's all I need. Your grace and mercy has brought me thus far. You never gave a promise that the journey will be easy. Your grace and mercy, your grace and mercy, your grace and mercy has brought me thus far.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anderson. Well, let me say that the person I'm going to introduce is an example of the saying that hard work pays. And that if you are consistent with what you do, there's always a future for you. Hard work, patience, consistency, determination. He's a symbol of that. The speaker for today, I'll say, if you want to talk about him, maybe it will take a long time, but I'll just mention a few things. Once upon a time, he was the youth organizer of the New Patriotic Party. Long ago, at some point in time, he was a spokesperson for President Akufo-Addo when he wasn't the president anyway. He worked with him for a long time, over a long period of time. In the days when President Akufo-Addo was struggling to get the opportunity to become the president of this country, he was with him. After President Akufo-Addo became the president of Ghana, he appointed him as a Minister of Information. Is it Minister of Information or Minister for Information? Sometimes we confuse the two. Minister of Information. Mm-hmm. And then later, he left that ministry and was appointed the CEO, that's the Chief Executive Officer of the National Petroleum Authority. But the beautiful thing about him is this. He was here with us. He was with us in the Department of Religion and Human Values. You see, I intentionally left that for the last. See how happy you are. That should tell all of us that if we work hard, do well in what we are doing, and we are determined, there's more that we can achieve. This person I'm talking about is no other person than Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Petroleum Authority. I believe today, by the time you leave here, you know everything you need to know about the NPA. The petrol runs the engine of the country. Everything depends. So now, if he decides that tomorrow we are not going to sell petrol, we are in trouble. So he wields a lot of power about whether my car will move tomorrow or not, or whether all the engines will move. So you see that he wields a lot of power. So by the time we leave here, he has a very strong team as well, and they are going to tell us a lot about the NPA today. The things we never knew, those we know, we are going to strengthen them, but those we don't, we'll get to know them today. So Doc, welcome and thank you once again. Before you speak, let me say thank you once again for mooting this idea and taking also the opportunity to do the first presentation. What it means that you wanted to make sure it happened. It has happened. And I thank you for bringing up the idea, and that today we are starting the program. Thank you very much. So audience, this is Dr. Mustafa Hamid. Dr. Mustafa Hamid, here we are.
So with a standing ovation, let's invite Honorable Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid. So please, we can take our seat. Thank you for the honor and the respect.
Nelson here to interact with us and tell us a little bit about her book. Unfortunately, as we normally say, man proposes, God disposes. Just yesterday, woman disposes. Okay. Okay, man, woman disposes. Okay. So she couldn't be here. We are very sorry. I was very upbeat about her coming. I wanted her to be here so we could interact. Unfortunately, just yesterday, something cropped up, something beyond her control. So she couldn't be here. And we are sorry, extremely sorry about that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Safo. I think that acknowledgements have been done, but I would make my own two very important acknowledgements. My very, very good friend, and somebody whilst I was teaching here, I considered my intellectual sparring partner, Dr. Rogers Asempasa. I acknowledge you. I'm very grateful. Rogers. Then my very good friend, Professor Grant. He's the one, quite frankly, when I got in here, sat me down and said, my brother, let me teach you a few tricks and you can be senior lecturer in 4 years. And I followed his tricks. In 4 years exactly, I was senior lecturer. Professor Grant, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful. So we go to the subject of the matter today. So as you can see, the topic for today's Town and Gown series is the downstream petroleum industry in Ghana, the state of play. When we say the state of play, we just mean as is or as it is. In other words, what it is today. That's all that the state of play means. And so downstream petroleum industry, first of all, let me say that the petroleum industry is divided into two parts. We have the upstream and the downstream. In other countries, they have what they call upstream, midstream, and downstream. So if you read in other literature that there's a midstream, that is peculiar to other jurisdictions. But we are in Ghana, so I'll stick to the Ghanaian definition. So in Ghana, we have an upstream and a downstream. What we mean by upstream petroleum industry is anywhere from when the crude oil is in the belly of the earth to when it is developed, produced, extracted, transported, exported, sold, whatever. That whole process is the upstream petroleum industry. The process of extraction, developing, and so on. Now, when the product hits a refinery, then the downstream starts. When the crude hits a refinery, then the downstream petroleum industry starts. So, anywhere from a refinery to a petroleum depot to a marketing company to your filling station into your car, that whole value chain is the downstream petroleum industry. And that is what the National Petroleum Authority regulates. So, and of course, when I say refinery, in our case, we don't have too many refineries in Ghana, and I'll come to that. So, in our case, importation of refined petroleum product is also a downstream activity. So, from importation to storage to distribution, that is the downstream petroleum industry in Ghana. Now, the National Petroleum Authority is the authority, as I said, responsible for monitoring, overseeing the downstream petroleum industry in Ghana. And the National Petroleum Authority was established in 2005 by an act of parliament called Act 691, the National Petroleum Authority Act. And just by the way, I found out when I came to head the NPA that the act was signed into law. The bill was signed into law 14th of June 2005. And 14th of June is my birthday. And then I am here at the NPA. Now, in the NPA, there are various divisions, if you want, directorates, that helps the chief executive to do its work. And some of the key directorates are pricing, UPPF, quality assurance, and then maybe inspections and monitoring. But I'll explain all of that. So first of all, there are... So this is what I meant by upstream and downstream. So you see, oil and gas exploration and production is all upstream. Then when it comes to refinery, storage, distribution, and marketing of refined products, that whole gamut of activities falls under the petroleum downstream. And all of us are regulated by our mother ministry, which is the Ministry of Energy. Okay? So perhaps as the Town and Gown series rolls on, perhaps perhaps the organizers will have the opportunity to bring other energy sector agencies like the Ghana National Petroleum Authority, Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company, Ghana Gas Company, etc., etc. All of us are within the downstream petroleum states, and all of them are regulated by the National Petroleum Authority. Oh, sorry. So, in the downstream petroleum industry, as you can see from the slides, we have the refineries. So first of all, we have what we call the BIDEX. BIDEX are bulk, import, distribution, and export companies. So there are companies that import petroleum products. That's their sole activity. And for you to get a license to import petroleum products, you must come to the NPA. So the NPA licenses companies to import petroleum products. And to this day, we have licensed about 45 BIDEX, which are responsible for importing your petroleum products, diesel, petrol, etc., etc. To obtain a BIDEX license, you pay an initial fee of $750,000 United States dollars. So just in case you are thinking of coming to me to take a license for the importation of petroleum products, the initial license fee $750,000 United States dollars, and annually you renew by paying $300,000 United States dollars. That's for BIDEX. Now, if we are not importing, then we are refining. Now, in Ghana, we have refineries, about 4 refineries. No, actually 3 refineries. How do they call it? Tema Oil Refinery, TOR, which is the government refinery. And then we have 2 small private refineries called Platon and Aquaba. But their refining capacity is just about, like we said, 1,700 barrels per day for Platon. Aquaba refines 4,000 barrels per day. That's very small. Now we have licensed a Chinese man who is establishing another refinery in the Tema area, and it's called Sentio Refinery. He's hoping to start refining by September, and he will start by refining 40,000 barrels a day with the hope that we will hit 100,000 barrels a day when the refinery goes to its peak. Of course, if you have more refineries in your country, it means that petroleum prices would be much cheaper as opposed to importation. So we are hoping to ramp up. Atoabo Gas was established. That's a Ghana government entity that utilizes our natural gas resources, and then either for power purposes or also for domestic use, LPG usage. But the domestic production of LPG is just about 30%. About 30%. 70% of our LPG use is still by import. Now, from the refineries, we have storage. So when you refine your products, hitherto, if you are coming to the NPA for a license to import petroleum product, part of the requirement is that you must show capacity storage. In other words, you must build a storage facility before we give you a license. But now we have relaxed that bit of the requirement because we believe that now we are over-tanked. We have enough petroleum storage tank capacity in the country. Now we have BOST. BOST means Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company. And that is also regulated by the NPA, and they are responsible for moving petroleum products across the country, either through barges, that's on the Volta Lake, through Akosombo to the north in Bupe, or through what we call BRVs, but which you know as tankers. will constantly come on site to monitor your progress of building the facility. Then when you finish, we will give you permission to test run. And then when you test run and we are satisfied that there will be no hitches and glitches and so on, then we give you the final authority to operate. That's how it is done. And then constantly our people come to monitor and see what is going on. I'll go to, let me go to quality assurance before I go to PF. So what Said and his people do in their department is that they are responsible for certifying the quality of petroleum products that have been imported in the country and which are being consumed by the general population. So Said and his people oversee a network of laboratories, both mobile and stationary laboratories. So as we speak, for example, there are quality assurance officers of MPA who are all over the country collecting samples from filling stations. And we do it almost on a daily basis and at random. So we can just come to your filling station, pick up a sample and test in our mobile laboratory facility. If we are not satisfied, then we bring it to the headquarters of the NPA for further testing. And there are parameters that they are looking for. I mean, those are detailed chemistry or chemical parameters. When it fails, then we tell you that you have failed and you should close down the filling station, because the fuel that you are selling to the public would be injurious or harmful to the general population. So that's what happens with quality assurance. Now, with licensing. Licensing is the department or directorate that issues, like I said, either a BDC license or a license to establish a refinery or a license to operate an OMC. And if you establish your OMC, you establish your filling station. And by the way, let me also add that for you to qualify to have an OMC license, you must show evidence of at least 7 filling stations. In the MPA, we actually say 4 service stations and 3 filling stations. A service station is a station where you can get ancillary services like either changing your oil, changing your pads, you know, those kinds of other services would qualify your place as a service station. And a place where you just buy only fuel is called a filling station. But of course, in ordinary nomenclature, we classify all of them as filling stations. So you should have 7 before you qualify to apply for an OMC license. And it is licensing department that does that. Now, UPPF. UPPF means Unified Petroleum Price Fund. Now, you would notice that unlike cement or iron rod or other building materials or other such products, with petrol, diesel, kerosene and the likes, the same price that you buy fuel in WA is the same price that you buy it in Axim. It's only petroleum products that behave like that. With cement, the price of cement is higher as you go up north. Who knows why? Transportation. Because the cost of transportation is slapped on everything else except petroleum products. For petrol, we don't allow importers and OMCs to slap the cost of transport on the product. If we do, then those people in the north will be disadvantaged. And especially in a country where we have said the poorest regions are the 5 regions of the north. If they are supposed to buy fuel again at higher cost, then it will worsen their economic situation. So we don't allow that to happen. So the petrol that you buy, and Abbas will explain that when he comes to explain how petrol is priced. So for every liter of petrol that you buy, Professor Safo, you pay 45 pesos as UPPF fund. For every liter of petrol, there's 45 pesos that you have paid, which we are using to pay the transporters. Is it 45 or 49? It's now what? It's now 75 pesos. So 75 pesos for every liter of petroleum product you buy goes into a UPPF fund. So the transporters, what they do is that they just have to just transport the petroleum product. But we have to know where you are transporting it to. And we track every vehicle, every tanker that you see on the road is tracked and monitored at the MPA office in Accra. At every point in time, we have live screens that we are seeing every single BRV where it is going. So that you don't tell us that you brought the thing to Cape Coast when in fact you just dumped it in Kaswa. Because why we have to monitor is that we are going to pay you the cost of transporting the product to Cape Coast. So if you dump it in Kaswa and come to claim money for having sent it to Cape Coast, you are putting a drain on the fund. So the monitoring and tracking that we do is to ensure that people indeed are taking the petroleum product to the places that they said they are taking them to. So that's the work of the UPPF fund. Abbas would explain the details. Then economic regulation and planning. This directorate is called Economic Regulation and Planning. Initially, before I came to MPA, it was called Directorate of Pricing and Planning. But I came as part of my vision for the MPA, I changed it to Economic Regulation and Planning. Because I realized that what we do at the place is more than just pricing. Because we do the entire economics of the downstream petroleum industry in terms of how much petroleum products we need per month in the country. You remember recently we did something called gold for oil, for example. We realized that every month Ghana requires $400 million to import petroleum products. That's how much we're using every month to import petroleum products, $400 million. And so it was difficult to find $400 million every month. And so people go to the open market to go and find the $400 million. And then the exchange rate volatility is transferred onto the petroleum prices. So we decided that we spoke to Ghana, Bank of Ghana, and decided that we should do what we call an auction, where Bank of Ghana provides the importers with the dollars at a standard rate, not the market rate, so that we are able to control the prices. But in time, the Bank of Ghana was not able to meet our requirements. They started by giving us about 60% of our requirements every month. Then it dwindled to about 20%. So when it came down to 20%, then we said we have to find another way of circumventing this dollar matter. And that's why we introduced the gold for oil, where we use our gold resources in an indirect and direct way of exchanging for petroleum products, so we can eliminate the pressure on the Ghanaian cedi. So that's what economic regulation do. The planning bit is what I told you. So we plan to say that in the next 2-3 weeks, what are the volumes of diesel, of petrol that we need? The planning people are constantly monitoring. So right now, if I call MPA, the head of planning, Dominic, can say, sir, we have 5 weeks of petroleum products, or 5 weeks of petrol, maybe 2 weeks of diesel. So when he tells me that we have only 2 weeks of diesel, or even if he says precariously that, Chief, we have only 4 days left of diesel supplies, then what it means is that I must quickly find a BDC which is ready to import petroleum products for us immediately to augment stocks. And to do that, again, you don't just, because you have a license to import petroleum products, you don't just import. You still come to MPA for us to give you what we call a laycan. So a laycan is a schedule of the number of vessels owned by which BDC which should dock, when they should dock, when they should discharge, and all that. It's all done by a timetable which is done by the planning department of the National Petroleum Authority. And then finally, we have, I've talked about quality assurance, and then we have gas. The gas department, you know, we are in a period that they call an energy transition period. They say that we should get away from the use of fossil fuels. Abbas and I have a different theory, but it's okay. This is not the place for that theory. But the world says that we should move away from fossil fuels into renewable energy. Renewable energy being geothermal, wind, solar, and even thermal. Isn't it? Hydro. So hydro, geothermal, wind, and solar. And that we should forget fossil fuels. Now, in an age of energy transition, gas has been designated as the transition fuel because gas is cleaner. It's at least is cleaner than crude. And so gas is the transition fuel. And so very soon, I'm sure you've seen that they started manufacturing electric cars and all of that. And even in the transition to electric cars, we are beginning to encourage people to move from the use of petrol and diesel in their cars to the use of gas itself, which is basically auto gas. Now this department, we set it up in order to take charge of the transition process towards cleaner energies, the use of gas as our transition fuel towards renewable energy. And that's what the director of gas is doing. Very soon, in the course of this year, we are going to phase out filling station for gas, for LPG. You are no longer going to be able to carry your cylinder to a gas filling station to fill the cylinder. We are going to replace them with exchange points, a cylinder exchange point. So you carry your empty cylinder, you go and put it there and take a filled one to your house. Just like we used to buy Coca-Cola before. Because, hello, because, hello, because it's dangerous. The filling station concept is becoming, or perhaps let me even dare say, has become outdated. And the better option is to do cylinder exchange. What we need are bottling companies where the cylinders will be filled, will be bottled, and then brought to the exchange points. As we speak, we have licensed 3 companies, right, to establish bottling companies. GOIL is establishing 2, one in Kumasi, one in Tema. And we have licensed 2 other. Blue Ocean is ready. There's a private company whose bottling plant is already ready. We are hoping that latest August, the GOIL bottling plants will come on stream, and then we will kickstart the exchange facilities model. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. This gives you an overview of the National Petroleum Authority and what we do. And then I'll allow Abbas, my head of economic regulation, to give you details of how we price, we arrive at the prices of petroleum products. Abbas.
Thank you very much, Chief. Good afternoon to you all. So just as my boss has said, I'll be taking you through the pricing of petroleum products. All right, so I'll be taking you through the pricing of petroleum products in the UPPF and how it operates. Okay. So when Prof was speaking, he mentioned that economists run on petroleum product consumption. It is very critical for every. If there's no petroleum product, the economy comes to a halt. And that is why, if you notice, or if you've been reading around, you notice that the countries that consume the most petroleum products are the biggest economies in the world. As we speak, the US is the largest economy in the world, and they are the largest consumer of petroleum products. China is the second largest consumer of petroleum products, and we all know they are the second largest economy in the world. Japan follows in that order. So the more petroleum products you consume, the stronger. So when you notice that your economy's consumption of petroleum products is dropping, it signifies or it's a signal that economic activity in your country is also dropping. So we'll be taking you through the pricing of these petroleum products, which are so critical to our economies. Please, please check the connection for me. Thank you very much. So as we said, the price of the petroleum product is critical. When my boss mentioned the prices, and people started screaming. So we are all very much concerned about pricing. So as a regulator, our job is to ensure that the price you pay for petroleum products at the pump is something that you are getting value for money for. So you are not cheated or you are not overpaying. And also the one bringing the fuel is also not pricing below cost, because if they are not able to price at the cost that they bring in the product, we will not get a product. So in this, we are guided by 3 key policy objectives in pricing petroleum products. As an authority, this is what guides us in pricing petroleum products. The first is what we call the full cost recovery of investment. Like my boss explained, we have a number of companies in the value chain of the petroleum downstream industry, starting from whether you are a refinery or you are an importer, to storage, to marketing company where you build filling stations for us to buy the fuel, and it comes at a cost. So we have to ensure that the pricing of petroleum products has a cost that enables you to recover your investment. Like I said, if you're a businessman and you invest and you sell the product below cost, it means that you'll be making losses and eventually you'll be out of business and you'll not be able to supply the product that we need. So it is very important that we do this. The second policy objective is to ensure that we generate revenue for government. So just like any product or service in the country, government can decide to impose taxes and levies on these products or services to generate revenue for government, budget, and other activities. So petroleum products also, from time to time, governments, through parliamentary approval, introduce taxes or amend or repeal others on petroleum products. As an authority, we have to make sure that anytime the government, through parliamentary approval, introduces any levy on petroleum products, the formula we use to set these prices have these taxes and levies in them. And then last but not the least, to ensure uniformity in prices. My boss mentioned the UPPF. So we do that through the UPPF, and in the course of the presentation, I'll show you how the UPPF operates. So the price you pay for fuel at the pump is what we call the ex-pump price. At the pump, you pay the ex-pump price. So currently, if you go to a Gulf filling station and you pay 12 cedis, 40 pesos for petrol, that's what we call the ex-pump price. Now, what goes into this ex-pump price? That is what I'm here to show you. So we have the first item called the ex-refinery price. Now, when the product is leaving the refinery, that's the ex-refinery price. So the importers or the refinery, the price at which they sell the product to the oil marketing company like Gore is what we call the ex-refining price. And in this ex-refining price, there are several components, a few components which I'll show you. And then there are taxes and levies in the price build-up. So the price build-up starts with the ex-refining price. Then you add taxes and levies. After that, you add statutory margins. So we have margins. In the margins, we've broken them down into statutory margins and distribution margins. I will explain, or you will see the number of taxes and levies and the margins that are on the price build-up, and then what they do. Now, the ex-refining price, which I mentioned, that is the price at which Gore, for example, will buy from the refinery or from the importer. This is made up of the FOB price. The FOB price is the free on board or the world market price. So the importer goes to the world market. Let's say you go to Northwest Europe, Amsterdam, and you buy petrol there. That is the price of the product in Amsterdam. The FOB, just like other products, so we have the FOB from the source. Now you have to bring this product to Ghana before you can sell. So there's a cost that comes with that. And when you take the FOB price, you add what we call the supplies premium. This supplies premium includes the freight for moving the product from Amsterdam to Tema. And then when the product gets to Tema, there are several costs that you incur. For example, you have to test the product to ensure that it has met our quality specifications. It comes at a cost. You have to use a facility called the discharge facility to discharge the product from the ship into a storage tank. It also comes at a cost because that's somebody's investment and they must recover the cost of building that facility. When it goes in the storage tank, like my boss said earlier, there are people who invest in storage tanks. They also have to charge a fee. The storage tank is like a warehouse. So when you store products there, you pay a fee for that. So that's a storage fee. There are several other costs. As a business, you have workers you pay, there are administrative costs, there are financial risks. So all of this together is what we call the suppliers premium. So the importer adds the world market price to the suppliers premium, then they sell it to the oil marketing company. Now, the world market price, which I mentioned, the FOB price, it changes on the day-to-day basis. Every day it is changing, just like the exchange rate changes on a day-to-day basis. Now, for the sake of transparency, we want consumers to know what is influencing these prices. So, for example, in this current window in which we are, which is the 16th of July to the 31st of July, these are the world market prices that were used in setting the products. So 27 June to 11th of July, we monitor the daily prices on the world market. And that is what the importers have used to set the price for this window. The window that just passed, which was the 1st to the 15th of July, they used these prices. So we publish these price indicators in daily papers on our website, so that as a consumer, even from looking at this, you would see that the price for petrol, for example, in the previous window was 819. It moved to 820. As they change, it indicates whether the price on the market will increase or not. And these inform the changes in the price on the market. When the price on the world market goes up, the price here will go up. When the price drops, the price will drop. And that's why you see that in Ghana, almost every 2 weeks, the price is changing. And that's because we have two pricing windows in the country, the first half of the month and the second half of the month. And they are influenced by actual numbers on the market. Now, what I have to mention is that when the importer brings the product, they pay $ per metric ton. So you go to Amsterdam, you pay $ per metric ton. You ship it to Ghana, you pay $ per metric ton. But we all know we buy fuel in cedis. So the exchange rate plays a factor there as well. And that is why we monitor the exchange rate also. So the performance of our exchange rate also influences our price. So I would like to, first of all, before I show you the relationships or the impact of the world market price on our prices and the exchange rate on our prices, I mentioned that there are several taxes and levies in the price build-up, and there are also margins. I would mention a few of these taxes and levies. So we have the special petroleum tax in the price build-up, which goes to government to generate revenue for its activities. We have energy debt recovery levy also. So all of these are in an act we call the Special Energy Sector Levies Act. And when you take the Energy Sector Levies Act, all these taxes are mentioned there and their purposes are mentioned there as well. I would like to speak about one of them, for example, which is the Price Stabilization and Recovery Levy. This levy was introduced to pay for the subsidies that we have on premix fuel. Now, if some of those who remember, in July 2015, prices of petroleum products were deregulated. When we say deregulation, what we mean is that government's control of pricing was taken off. Prior to July 2015, government could intervene in pricing petroleum products and actually subsidize petroleum products. And in doing so, it means that when the importer brings the product and is supposed to sell at, let's say, 2 cedis, government may say sell to the consumer at 1 cedi, which means that government has to refund the 1 cedi to the importer. There were times when it delays. Later, I will explain some of the challenges. And therefore, government decided to deregulate and allow the changes on the world market and the changes in exchange rate to directly reflect the price we pay at the pump. Those of you who have been monitoring, Nigeria, for example, has been subsidizing petrol for so many years, just like we used to do before we deregulated in July 2015. With this new president that Nigeria has, he's also decided to deregulate petrol. He has removed the subsidies on petrol, and therefore they are paying the full cost of petrol right now in Nigeria. So subsidies have some challenges, but for premix fuel, which is used by our artisanal fishermen, the canoe fishermen, government decided to continue to subsidize it for them because of their economic activity. So to ensure that when government subsidizes premix fuel, government is able to pay for the subsidy and not delay in payment, which can affect supply, government introduced the price stabilization and recovery levy. So government generates revenue from this and uses that to pay for the subsidies that we have on premix fuel so that the suppliers can continue to supply this product. We have margins. Unlike the taxes and the levies that go to government to support government activities, budgetary activities, margins are for special operational purposes. So each margin has a purpose in the price border. If you take the first one that we have here called the primary distribution margin, this is for the interdepot transfer of petroleum products. My boss mentioned how the EPPF operates. When I get to that section, I will explain how the interdepot transfer is done and how this margin does. But to move products from one depot to the other so that we can do the EPPF well, we have to pay for the cost of transporting from the primary depot, which is in Tema, for example, into secondary depots, which we have in Kumasi and Bube. And the primary distribution margin pays for that cost of transportation. We have the UPPF margin, which pays for the cost of the... Okay. So the UPPF margin, which I've mentioned, pays for product transfer from filling station to depots to filling station. I will explain that as well. And then we have the boss margin. So all the margins you see here have specific uses and operational purposes. The fuel marking margin, for example, that you see here, the quality assurance department, it finances their operations, and when Said comes, we explain what that does as well. So now, if you look at the price that we have at the pump today, what composition of it forms the ex-refining price, which I explained, that is the cost of landing the product before we sell to the oil marketing company. That forms 73% of the price for petrol. So if you look at the price for petrol as we have today, 73% of the price is the cost of the petrol itself, the cost of buying it on the world market, landing it before you can sell to the oil marketing company. The taxes and the levies form 15% of the price that you pay today. And then the margins, the statutory ones, form 9%, and the distribution ones are the ones that go to the operators like the oil marketing companies. So they take 3% of the price. So that's using GOR's, this is GOR's price, so using GOR's price. Now, because we said we have a deregulated market, prices vary from one company to the other. If you look at Star Oil, for example, even though the percentages are very close, because their prices vary, the percentages are a bit different. So unlike GOR that has 73% of its price being the ex-refining price, it is 72% for Star Oil. GOR's margin was 3%, but it is 2% for Star Oil. And you know Star Oil and GOR don't have the same strength in terms of brand strength. GOR is bigger than Star. So Star has a way to reduce their cost of operations, and therefore they're able to use lower margins than GOR. So that's the differences that you see in the price of petroleum products. Now, just to show you that the price that you see at the pump is influenced by the cost of doing the business and not somebody sitting in MPA or somebody sitting in their office and deciding that this window I will charge this price. It is informed by the price on the world market. So I told you what the FOB price is. The FOB price is the world market price, and then we have the pump price. So if you see the yellow and the orange lines here, this is the pump price since the beginning of this year to June. So that's the trend of the price in Ghana. What is informing this trend? So you see that there are times when it moves, then it drops, it moves, and it drops again. So it goes up and down based on how the world market prices move. The blue line and the gray line you see here are the prices for petrol and diesel on the world market. So as the petrol and diesel price on the world market move, it informs what happens in Ghana. So you see that they have a very direct correlation. They move almost in the same direction. As the world market prices move, the price of petrol in Ghana also move. Now the exchange rate is another key variable, which also informs the price in Ghana. I've shown this graph to show you that because of deregulation, there are different prices on the market. I've selected a few of the companies. We have GOR, Total, Zen. And you see that a number of the smaller companies are below the big ones like GOR and Total. I mentioned to you that GOR, for example, is a big brand. Its cost of operation is different from a company like Star Oil or GORS. Their operational costs vary, and therefore they charge different prices. Also, because of competition and deregulation, they may get the product at different prices based on the kind of negotiations they make with the importers. So this informs the variations in prices you see at the pump. It's not because somebody's fuel is bad and that's why they charge low. It is informed by competition. Now we have deregulated. So why did we deregulate? I mentioned earlier that we deregulated in July 2015. So there were delays in payment of subsidies to petroleum suppliers. And when you delay in supplying them petroleum products, what it means is that it threatens supply. Nigeria, we all know, produce a lot of crude oil, which they export and then bring in finished products. But before they removed the subsidies in Nigeria, there were a lot of shortages of petrol in Nigeria because government was subsidizing or was not paying. Ghana actually experienced some of these shortages in June 2014, for example, because government was not able to pay the subsidies to them. So government decided to deregulate, and since we deregulated in July 2015, there has never been shortage of petroleum products in Ghana because the suppliers are able to recover their cost of investment. We would prefer to have the product and pay the right price, but not to have it at all, because when there are shortages, black markets occur, we end up paying more than we should have actually paid. So it's better to make sure that the pumps are running and there are fuels at the pump. And then inability of government to also give the BDCs or the BIDEX dollars. They all relied on the Bank of Ghana. My boss earlier mentioned some of the things that the Bank of Ghana is doing to ensure that we always get exchange rate, the dollar for the suppliers. At the time, because government was regulating the prices, government will inform what exchange rate we should use in certain price. So government may use 12 cedis, for example, to set the price today. By the time they sell the fuel, exchange rate has gone to 13. Now that loss, government has to pay, and we call that exchange rate losses. So always they were coming back to government and pressure. So to ensure that fuel is always available, we deregulated, and to a large extent, it's addressed a number of the challenges we have. But do we say that because government has deregulated, MP has closed its eyes and does nothing? No. Petroleum products are a very critical and sensitive product that the regulator must make sure that the price you pay, like I said, you are getting value for money. So MPA continues to do monitoring and ensuring that everybody that sets a price in Ghana, they submit it to us. So if you are an importer, you submit your ex-final price board up to us and review to make sure that your price is in line with the prescribed petroleum pricing formula. If you're an OMC like Gore, you also submit your indicative price to us and review your prices. On our own, we also do a market survey and market analysis and ensure that the prices are actually realistic. Now, like Chief said, we have our regional offices who also go around and do price monitoring in addition to the other inspections they do. And they provide us with the information of the price they see at the pump. And this helps us to analyze the prices nationwide and ensure that no oil marketing companies, outlets are cheating consumers. Where we find out that anyone is doing that, there are penalties and sanctions that we have to enforce on them. There are technologies that we've implemented actually now to help us monitor prices from the pumps without even going there physically. Now, I would end my presentation by saying that even though we've deregulated, there are a few products, like I mentioned, premix fuel, which is still regulated by the MPA, but that is subsidized. Other products which we regulate but are not subsidized, we have what we call the residual fuel oil. This is used by the industries in running their boilers. They have machines to produce products, the manufacturing industries in Ghana. And then we have aviation turbine kerosene, which is used by the aviation industry. We also have gas oil that is used by the companies that do oil production, the rigs. They use what we call the gas oil mines. So these are what goes into the pricing. Now, a critical part of the pricing formula, which we mentioned, is the Unified Petroleum Price Fund, which ensures that if you are in Takwa and you are in Wa or you are in Tamale, if we are all buying fuel from Gore, we all pay the same price, and so that not the one in Tamale is paying more. That's what the UPPF does. Now, the UPPF looks over two key things. I mentioned the primary distribution margin. So this pays for the distribution of petroleum products from the primary depots into the inland depots. So you move products from the depots in the coastal areas through barges, different modes. So we have river barges, which move products on the water, from particularly from Akosombo to Bupe. And then we have pipelines also for moving products. And then we have the BRVs, which we call the bulk road vehicles. Those are the tankers you see around. They also move products. So they move products from the coastal depots into our inland depots in Kumasi. We have one in Kumasi and we have one in Bupe. So we've zoned the country. Now the UPPF pays for the movement of petroleum products from the secondary depots to our retail outlets. So the OMCs can now send their tankers to the depots in their zone to now lift the products to their various filling stations. So that's how the UPPF operates. Now, what are the objectives? To ensure that there's regular supply of petroleum products to all parts of the country. So we don't want to hear of shortages in some parts of the country. So it ensures efficient distribution. And also to ensure that, most importantly, the price is the same, as my boss explained earlier. And then to achieve an efficient system. Achieving an efficient system here means that the mode of transportation should not be overly expensive. That's why we have different modes of transportation and also monitor the distances you travel. So you don't come and say I've traveled 10 kilometers when you did 5 kilometers. Now, we have zoned the country into 5, like I said. We have the Tema zone, we have the Kumasi zone, the Takoradi zone, the Bupe zone, and the Bolga zone. Each of these zones have depots there. Each of these zones have depots there. So if you see our map, we have a depot in Bolga, which is operated by BOST. We have a depot in Bupe, which is operated by BOST. And we have a depot in Kumasi. So the depot in Bolga and Bupe, for example, are connected by a pipeline. So we move products from Bupe to Bolga through a pipeline. From Akosombo, Mamuota, from Akosombo to Bupe, we use the river barge. And then we also use a combination of the BRVs, the bulk road vehicles, to move some of the products to Bupe. From Tema to Kumasi, we use bulk road vehicles to move the products. And then, as we all know, along the coast, the products arrive in vessels, and then we move from the vessel to the depots in the coastal area. So like I said, these depots are the primary depots. And we move the products from these primary depots to the secondary depots inland, because the vessels cannot come to Kumasi and Bupe and Bolga to discharge products there. So these are the zones as we have, like I've mentioned. These are for white products. When we say white products, we mean petrol, diesel, kerosene. And then we have a zone for LPG as well. So for LPG, we all know of the Atuabo depot, Atuabo gas processing plant. They produce LPG. So we have zoned the Atuabo area to serve the western region, western north central region, parts of Ashanti, Bono, and Ahafo. So all the LPG that comes to the central region and all these places come from the Atuabo gas processing plant. And then the Tema zone serves all these parts as well. So all the LPG that is imported serves this part of the country. This is to ensure that the zones are working very efficiently. Now, in transporting products, my boss has already explained this. The cost of transportation is added. But because we are using the UPPF, unlike cement, where you pay more when you are far away from where the product is produced or imported into the country, for petrol, you pay the same price everywhere. And this is because of the UPPF. This is a very innovative thing that Ghana has done. And several other countries are coming to Ghana to learn this. Because as we all know, African countries have the same characteristics. The poor are always living away from the coast. And they are the ones who pay more for fuel, which shouldn't be the case. So UPPF is serving Ghana very well. Now, to ensure that we do this, we just calculate in the price build-up. My boss mentioned that we have a margin, which is the UPPF margin. So we impose, let's say, 75 pesos in the UPPF margin, in the price build-up. Not all the companies that transport products use that 75 pesos. Some will travel short distances, some will travel more than 75 pesos can pay for. So those, when we do the calculations, those who travel more than what the 75 pesos can pay for, the fund compensates them. And those who travel less than the 75 pesos, we calculate and ensure that the fund refunds them. But you will notice that if we don't monitor well, then it means that people come and lie to us that I moved 10 kilometers when they did 5 kilometers. 5 kilometers. We used to have a lot of challenges when we did this manually. So MP has introduced a lot of technologies to ensure that there is efficient transportation of petroleum products and distribution. So the first one is what we call the Enterprise Relational Database Management System. So here, all transactions in the industry now are done through this Enterprise Database Management System. Whether you are importing or you are loading from the depot or you are placing an order to lift petroleum products, you do it in the system so that there is no issue about fake documents, fake signatures. Everything is done in the system. This ERDMS, as we call it, has helped us to do a lot of things. We also have the bulk road vehicle tracking system. My chief said that we track every single BRV that you have in Ghana. And we have a center in MPA that displays where the locations of these trucks are. So that when you go and stop here and you discharge here, we know that that's where you discharge the product. And then we have the National Retail Monitoring System. Now, this is another step of the UPPF also. There are stations where, for example, they receive products from other illegal sources and they take them to those stations. Or let's say if you move the product under UPPF and you say, I'm taking it to Cape Coast. Now, under the National Fuel Outlets Retail Monitoring System, we are able to tell that indeed the product was delivered into your tanks. We have installed what we call automatic tank gauging systems. And they show us the level of petrol in every single tank in Ghana, in every filling station. The installation is ongoing. We are not complete yet, but we've covered a number of stations. So from our office also, we have a command center that allows us to see the level of fuel in every filling station. There are times when people will call MP and say that there's a station here that says they don't have fuel, for whatever reason. Through this system, we can check that station and see whether indeed they have fuel in their system or not. And our price monitoring as well. As you are aware, physically monitoring price is very difficult. We have to move cars to filling stations to monitor prices. But through this system, we are able to see the price of fuel at every filling station in Ghana because the system allows us to see the price that has been set on the dispensing pump. So these three technologies together are helping us to eliminate the illegalities in the system through false claims by transporters and all that. So it has given us a lot of benefits. As you can see here, for example, the ERDMS has streamlined UPPF vetting processes. The manual process was very difficult and there were a lot of illegalities in there. The tracking system has also given MPA full visibility of all BRVs. And then lastly, the fuel monitoring system, one of the advantages is that it helps us to flag illicit receipt of products, as I mentioned. So these technologies together helps us to ensure that the UPPF is doing its work very well at a cost-efficient manner. Let me finally say that if we are not able to do this very well, what it means is that the UPPF margin will be inflated. We'll be charging more for transportation just because people are taking false claims or are taking money that they should not be taking from us. So these technologies together are helping us to do that. So when you hear the UPPF margin is 75%, don't be scared. It is to ensure that the cost of petroleum products is the same throughout the country, so we support each other just like insurance does. So I'll bring our presentation on the pricing and the UPPF to an end here. My colleague Said will take you through the quality assurance. But before he comes in, let me just say that the fuel market margin, which is also a margin we pay in the price build-up. Sometimes people say there are too much margins in the price build-up. Each margin serves a purpose. The fuel market margin, for example, serves the purpose of the quality assurance department. So that margin pays for the cost of operations of the fuel marking system. So Said will take you through what they do at the quality assurance department to ensure that the fuel you receive at the filling station is of top quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll try to make it a bit snappy and demystify it as well. Unfortunately, it's at the end time and we are dealing with science where a lot of people, sometimes it can be boring. So I'll try to make it a bit snappy on the quality assurance process. And straight away, we have to look at where we are coming from, where we started product quality somewhere in 2005 in the collaboration with the Ghana Standard Authority. And we have gone through a couple of transitions to the current state where we are operating one of the best quality control systems in Africa. The department, we have a directorate that have two departments that combine effectively to ensure that the product is monitored and the monitoring cost is reduced to the barest minimum. So if you wanted to test every filling station, for instance, to test a sample of petrol in a lab, it costs about $2,200 just to test one sample. So we have over how many? 4,000 filling stations in Ghana. You want to test a sample from each of them and test and pay at that cost, you will not be able to do that. So we've added a process we call petroleum product marking scheme, where we dope a very small chemical and use its concentration to monitor the quality in complementary to the actual testing, thereby ensuring that the cost of the quality process is reduced to a barest minimum. The chain, our CEO has elaborated on the entire chain, and we follow the process. Whenever there's movement of petroleum product, it stands a risk of contamination or adulteration, or both of them. So because of that, we have to find ways of monitoring the product anytime the product is moved to a different point. To help us do that, the Act has been spoken on. We have the standards that we use. For diesel, we have GS 141 2022. This is a recent standard that have been revised in accordance with the ECOWAS specifications. Hitherto, Ghana had the standard GS 141 2017, which was the best in West Africa. We're comparing with about 4 countries in Africa, actually, in terms of highest fuel quality standard. ECOWAS decided to adopt the Ghana standard and make it a uniform standard for entire ECOWAS sub-region. So few parameters were added to our standard, and recently Cape Verde and other countries have joined in switching to the higher standard of 50 ppm sulfur, which is making it more cleaner to use. There was sometimes reasons that necessitate the review of the standard. If I go back, there was this standard that our Chief Executive, Dr. Mustafa, when he came to MPA, within the first few months, we went to him to talk about an issue we realized in LPG, and he led a team to Ghana Standard Authority, which has the mandate to review the standard, and we were able to review, and now we have a new standard for LPG, which is GS 535-2022. So there are occasions that, for instance, if a research team in UCC detect that our fuel standard has a deficiency, they can write to us, and we can then call the Ghana Standard Committee team, which we are a member of, to ensure that the standard is reviewed accordingly. So we have some basic things that we do as we assess the fuel quality in tandem with the specifications. We also investigate on a regular basis the product quality, whether there's a problem or not. We need to monitor and initiate. If, for instance, somebody have a problem with the fuel quality that he or she purchased, you have the right to reach to us, and we'll investigate that as well, which is one of our mandates. Then, like I said earlier, we also review the standards when there's a need. It has a life cycle of 4 years, but if there's a need to review it before, then we do that as well. When you elaborate on those thematic areas, we always have a very good collaboration with the Ghana Standard Authority, and like my Chief Executive said, we have in the process of establishing one of the best laboratory in West Africa in the NPA head office to ensure that the cost of testing is reduced to the barest minimum. It is in an advanced stage now, and it has reduced and also make our process very efficient. The process normally starts, currently we are having about 90% of all the products being imported. A chunk of our work starts at the point where the ships bring the product. A ship could have about 11 tanks on it. So you have to monitor. For instance, if they bring you a certificate saying tank 1, 2, 3 are going to be discharged, you have to monitor and see that actually tank 1, 2, 3 are the product that you receive. Either than that, you could have a different product being served to you, and we have to do that very religiously. Then once that is happening, we take samples, and when the product meets the specifications, we then give approval for the product to be brought in. We also do additive. We also monitor additive. A number of oil marketing companies recently are adding enhancers to the fuel, which are not a requirement, yet they may have a lot of impact on the fuel quality. Hence, we are also monitoring what kind of additives are put into the petroleum products. So these are some of the documents that we use in vetting and ascertaining the product quality at the point of entry. When the product is moved to the depot, like I said, anytime the product moves, we have to go after it to see whether the product that we allow you to import is actually the product at the depot. So we'll go again to the depots to sample against and take it through the same round of assessment and testing to ascertain the product quality as well. The same process goes through at the retail outlet. So we also goes to the retail outlet. The regional manager here has a team of quality assurance personnel that goes around to sample the process, which we have added the marker. The marker allows us to do in a cheaper way of ascertaining that the product integrity is not compromised. Once the marker concentration is compromised, then we have to reassay the whole product to ensure that we have its quality reassayed and established to meet the required standard. And when there are problems, sometimes you have to involve a number of stakeholders to resolve the challenges. This is just to give you some few data. Science without data is always incomplete. For instance, Ghana is touted as having the cleanest fuel in the sub-region because of the 50 ppm policy. So we want to always see when we say 50 ppm, how much of the, what is the actual ppm of sulfur? So you see that in Q1 of 2022, we have the average sulfur being 10 ppm. So we are almost doing the ultra low, which is the European standard. Then in Q2 is 18, 13, and we have an annual average of 14 ppm of sulfur, and that is one of the highest grade you will find in Africa. For the diesel, so you are having this petrol, you have the averages for the quarters being 11, 15, 18, giving you a national average of 15 for year 2022. There is one important parameter for petrol I just need to establish. We have two standards of petrol in Ghana. We have one that is the regular grade, and we have one that is the premium grade. The distinctive feature is the research octane number, which for the regular, which is colored red. So when you buy petrol and it's red, that is the regular petrol. It has a minimum research octane number of 91. When it's green, that is the premium grade, it has a minimum research octane number of 95. And that is the highest standard in West Africa. Even in Africa, it's one of the highest standards. That's what Shell called V-Power. Actually, which Gold is now agreeing to sell to everybody at the normal price. So it's like an advert I'm doing for Gold, but that is the fact of the matter. So because of that, so we normally also focus on that parameter, and you see that line that for these particular parameters, you have an average research octane number of 95.2, which means that all the products are meeting specifications. And when you come to local production, so the refineries that Chief Executive mentioned of, we have given them a waiver to produce up to 1,500 ppm. So we also monitor them to see whether those actuals are being met. And you find out that Q1, Q2, where they were in activity, the average sulfur was 1,000, which is below the 1,500 ppm waiver allowed for them. When you come to at the retail outlet, the story is not too different. So now you have the production, local production, and the import reflecting at the pumps, where you now get the sulfur at the pumps being an average of 19. So you have the 14 combining with the few quantities of the 1,000, giving you an average ppm of 19. And when you come to gas oil, diesel, then you have the parameter inching up to 36, which is still lower than the 50 ppm minimum. So the marking aspect, like I said, also enables us to do a monitoring at cheaper rate, because unlike the full testing, which is very expensive, our field equipments are a cheaper way of sustaining the product integrity, which also helps us to deal and confirm the product quality and also give customer satisfaction as well. These are the products that we normally mark. We have diesel, super, and we have one we call differentiated products. There are other products that we don't mark, which are the low tax one, the premix. The incentive to always adulterate is driven from price differential. So where the product is very low, then you don't have that being a main target for adulteration. These are the achievement we've had in terms of we want to achieve always minimum 80%, but every year we end up having 100% coverage for the country in terms of monitoring. We have this equipment that we normally use to aid in our laboratory processes. I've already given you this, but to say, just to give you a gist of how we define them. So in dilution may not necessarily make the product bad, but it's probably because you have added something which is subsidized. Maybe it's a good petrol, but it's subsidized for a local use, and you have added it to the normal petrol. We will detect it as dilution, even though the quality will be bad. But in terms of adulteration, you are adding a substandard product into a high-grade product, rendering the quality inferior. And that is the distinction between the two. We have a lot of collaboration that helps us in doing our work. Thank you very much for your concentration.
We can do better, please. Let's give you a round of applause. I now understand why when the chairperson was introducing the guest speaker, he said he has the ability not to give us petrol tomorrow. And after listening to them, I also say that he has the ability to give us free petrol tomorrow. So at this point, we would want to take a few questions. 5 questions for our guest speaker. Yes, please. 1, 2, 3.
No, for first round. For first round.
Thank you very much. My name is Sharif Shani Sayeldo Amadou. I am level 850 Enfield Oil and Gas student. Yeah, so I was particularly happy when the Chief Executive Officer indicated that the Act 691, the MPA has the right to close down any filling station. Now, what he didn't add is that we can just wake up tomorrow and then all workers at the filling station will also decide to work. And you can go there and you can buy fuel. So what it means is that the health and safety of those people are also very paramount, not just the operations of the MPA. Now, my question really has to do with two areas. One, the mode of operation as to how MPA receive information from citizens and how MPA disseminate information to the citizens of Ghana. For example, I had an issue in Tamale and to MPA. I went to their website, went through all the contacts that they have there, called all the numbers there, and it was off. It was just a single number. The real direct operations of the technical directorate, especially those at the inspection, safety, and in fact, I delivered my thesis work I think last month, and it was on the same how leadership play a role on the health and safety at the pump. Because over the years we have realized that anytime there's an accident, whether it is sickness or anything, affects directly those at the point. Now the problem is it that when the inspectors, when they go to the filling station, they just directly ask them whether the apparatus or the equipment, or they want to see the dance having to use those equipment. For example, you go to the filling station and they don't even put nose mask. I know that we have contains sulfur, contains the VO, the volatile organic that has, health implications on the people. So I want to know what the health directorate they do. Thank you.
Of possible. Is it not actually possible to use of fuel in extract fuel in Ghana here? Thank you.
Well, thank you. I know it has been on, but when your first gentleman, I saw reclassification of it. It's now called Energy Debt Recovery Levy. I don't know if it is the same. Then I saw the last, another margin. This time it is energy levy. So I was to two new sectors, and so some clarification for me will be okay. Now I hope some time ago we used to have the problem of premix, and people now pumping premix into fuel stations and selling to. And so I remember during Professor Mills's time, in order to deal with that, they had to color the premix. So at a point it is blue color, at a point it is a different color, to ensure that dubious people will not sell premix for petrol. I don't know if that policy is still ongoing to ensure we don't have people's petrol, cars destroyed. Thank you.
We are doing one more question and then we end that round.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My question, when one of my boss, they were submitting, they said most of the tankers that move the fuel, all of them have been tracked. They know where to stop at a particular place. I want to find out the petroleum products that move on pipelines. What are they doing to the pipelines so that maybe somebody at any place can go there, get proper machines to go down, and also connect and use the fuel? I want to find out that one. And my second question is, most of our communities, you cannot site filling stations there. So some people go to the filling stations and buy the fuel and go to those areas to sell. When they go there and the quantity of the fuel is small and the dilute is small, to make it more so that they can make profit. So if you see something like that, who are the appropriate authorities to report? Thank you.
I will go to Professor Grant.
Thank you. I had decided not to ask a question, but I know that Doc will say I haven't been paying attention. So I would mention about two, and then for the next round I'll come again and then ask the others. I'm very glad I came because there was another competing meeting. I said no, if Mustafa is here, I'd have to see him, and the capacity in the room attests. And for a program that is coming at this time of the day, and we still have a lot of students here. Our students have done very well, and they deserve an applause. Now to my issue, I'll make them snappy. What is the interface, if any, between the MPA's Quality Assurance Unit and then the Ghana Standards Authority? So that if your guys go to a place and say, no, you must shut down because your fuel is not good, and then yet they are displaying the Ghana Standards Authority seal, which shows that everything is all right. So where is that interface? And there's another one which we'll discuss in the corridors. It's a bit nice. Then also many Western countries are ridding their roads of diesel engines in an attempt to switch to cleaner sources of energy, as you mentioned. You hinted about a theory that you and your guys have. What does this bode for Ghana that still uses diesel? So once they switch off, it means their cars will be coming down here, and we are still using fossil fuels. And whether the NPA shares in this philosophy of winning the world of fossil fuels. And in light of that, when everybody is clamoring for renewable energy, you mentioned some of them, I can add nuclear to it. Is there not the possibility that the NPA and other entities that benefit from our country's dependence on fossil fuels would consciously fight against the switch to cleaner sources of energy? That's a bit tough. And lastly, why do we tend to hear about changes in fuel pricing more from COPEC than from NPA? I know that they are consumers, so they are more interested. But I would love to hear from your public relations or your corporate affairs group. And is the government not ripping us off through NPA? Because fuel is an inelastic commodity. Thank you.
Right. So we will attempt to answer these questions in as short a time as possible. So I came with another gentleman, another alumnus of University of Cape Coast. He hasn't spoken. He's my head of communication at MPA, Mohammed Kudus. And so I would allow Kudus to answer the question how we receive and disseminate information in the communications department of MPA.
Thank you very much, my Chief Executive. So the question asks of how to reach the National Petroleum Authority and how does the National Petroleum Authority reach out to the general public. Let me start with the way you can reach us if you have a complaint or you have anything that you wish to share with us. We have dedicated lines that are active 24/7. One of it is 054 500 611. The other one is 054 500 6112. Then we have a Vodafone toll-free line. I need to emphasize, Vodafone toll-free line. If you use MTN, it would certainly not work for you. And that toll-free line is 0800 123 00. 0800 123 00. You can reach us as well through our email, which is mpghana@mpa.gov.gh. If you use any of this channel, or even if you decide to walk to any of our offices, either at the regional offices or at the head office, you certainly would find us and would, God willing, be able to attend to you. Then the other leg is, how do we reach out? We use several ways of actually doing that. One is through the media. We use either the traditional or the non-traditional media. The traditional here is in reference to the newspapers, the radio stations, the televisions, the online portals. Then we have the non-traditional, which is basically the social media handles that we have the Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, In fact, we are very, very visible on social media, and anytime that you want to reach us or want to seek or probably get an information from us, you can get it. And those handles are updated as regular as possible. And so again too is with our website, where you equally can go there and find information that you might find worthy for any cause that you are actually pursuing. Then apart from that, we regularly go on regional basis, trying to interface with the public, the media, so that at least we can touch base and then sell necessary information that the public might want. Just last 2 weeks, we're here having to interface with the public through the media on the planning division of, or planning department of the Economic Regulation and Planning Directorate of the National Petroleum Authority and the inspection, so people get to know the role of MPA in planning and the role of MPA in the siting of fuel stations. A lot of the time when fuel stations spring up, the immediate accusation is leveled at MPA. But like my chief executive actually alluded to, there are many processes. MPA is almost at the last end of it. And so we do not decide where is cited. And that is part of the communication that we try to give to the public. So if the question is about how we actually get people to reach out to us and how we reach out to the public, this is the short I actually can say about that. I thank you.
All right. The question about the health and safety either of workers of OMCs and BDCs, or shall I say of health or safe practices as obtained or occur in OMCs and BDCs. First of all, we are a regulator. Okay? We are not the employers of the workers of OMCs. We are not. So OMCs and BDCs who employ their people to work for them and who pay them should be responsible for ensuring their safety. What we do is primarily to ensure the safety of the consuming public, not the safety of workers who work for OMCs. I am responsible for the safety of MPA workers, people in Said's department who work with chemicals and so on. I am responsible for their safety. I am not responsible for the safety of the workers of Shell. I don't know whether you get the difference. I can only, so when I go to a Shell filling station, I'm looking out for infractions that will affect the general public, not their workers. I don't know whether you get the point that I'm trying to make. And so you need to get that distinction. Even so, let me mention something. When I came to the NPA, you know, drivers of BRVs, let's call them tanker drivers. The week that I set foot in NPA as chief executive, they were threatening to go on strike. And they are constantly threatening to go on strike. And anytime, in the last week, you remember, they even went on strike and, you know, there were no movements of petroleum products in the country, etc., etc. They are constantly threatening to strike because of non-payment of their salaries and allowances by their employers. You see, before I came to NPA, NPA said tanker drivers were not part of their stakeholders. And that is correct. It was a correct position because we don't employ them. They work for transport companies and so on. But even that, I changed the policy. And I said, to the extent that if they go on strike, it affects the entire economy of our nation, I have now declared that they are part of our stakeholders. So for those who follow the news, I was the first MPA chief executive to go to their yard, to go and meet with tanker drivers. Now I constantly engage them. Now even I have agreed with transport owners petroleum transport BRV owners that we will find a way of deducting some monies that we owe them at source, and we now will be responsible for paying the tanker drivers so that no owners would shortchange them so they go on strike for us. So there's a lot of innovation that me and my team are bringing into the industry to ensure that there is sanity. So we can assure you. But of course, just like anything, nothing is ever foolproof, actually. Accidents will occur. But when they do occur, or when we hear that a fuel station, something is happening, we immediately rush there. I can give you an example. There was a day that I was just landing from Nigeria. I was still on the plane. When I switched off on my phone, I got a message from Kweku Baku saying that there is a filling station. You remember that incident at Abelenke or something, that its tank was leaking. Immediately, I called Esther. It was a weekend, and within 30 minutes, our guys were there. We cordoned off the place. We locked up the place, and then we began to do the safety measures. There was another one that happened on the way to the Volta region. It was one rainy day, and water seeped into the underground tank. At Impoku, was it a shell company or something like that? Immediately, our people got there. The Eastern Regional Manager of then he was Eastern Regional Manager. I just transferred him to Central Region. He was Eastern Regional Manager. He immediately rushed to the place, closed down the thing, and we ensured that all the vehicles that bought fuel from that station that day were duly compensated by Shell. So we also follow up. You remember recently there is a musician, what's his name? Famille said that he had bought fuel from some station and that his engine broke down. To this day, we are following him and say, show us the station where you bought the fuel. He says he won't tell us. To this day. Then finally, he announces that the station has compensated him with 25,000 cedis, so he's okay. First of all, let me say without fear of contradiction that I don't believe him. It's part of this thing that musicians and artists and so on do. They call it hype or whatever. They want to trend, yeah, and so on. Because otherwise, how come that? Because it's not about you, family. It's also about the safety of the rest of the public. In fact, I told Faisal, I don't know why he didn't follow it. My personal assistant, he's a lawyer. I told him that we should report him to the police and compel him to tell us which station he bought fuel that his car broke down. Because it is not possible that that day the fuel station sold fuel to only Famille and didn't sell to any other vehicle. That's not possible. But he's a very compassionate guy, so I'm sure he saw that I got busy somewhere and forgot the matter. Now I've remembered. When we go back, I will hold you. Who does that today? Who does that? So, gold for oil. Gold for oil is a temporal measure. In fact, when we started, we said we were going to do it for 1 year, Abbas. Yes, we said we were going to do it for 1 year because of the volatility of international fuel prices, all the Ukraine wars, things were going up and so on. So we introduced it we said for 1 year to try and stabilize fuel prices, and then we go back to the status quo. As to how or why we are not using it to deal with crude in order to reduce prices and so on, I just told you in my presentation that we don't have enough refineries in Ghana. That's number one. Number two, Said said that the quality of machines that we have for refining petroleum products are not up to scratch. So, for example, Ghana, we have set 50 ppm, what we call 50 parts per million of sulfur content as the maximum for sulfur content for our fuels. For those who have traveled to countries like Benin and so on, when you go, do you feel the fumes in the air? There are some countries you can literally smell fuel in the air. That's down to the sulfur content of their fuel. And in many parts of West Africa, some have up to 3,000 ppm. I mean, some even do 10,000 ppm. And we are doing 50 ppm. We have the cleanest quality of fuel in the entire West Africa sub-region. And now ECOWAS has said that by 2025, all West Africa countries should emulate Ghana. So every day, people come to Ghana to come and learn from us. So the machines that we have at Tor, Akwaba, and Platon cannot refine 50 ppm. That's why Said said the maximum, the best they can do is 1,000 ppm. And we don't want to compromise on our standards and the environment. So for now, the bulk of Ghana's crude oil resources are exported, whilst we buy the cleanest fuel. We have a mechanism for helping Tor to upgrade its machines. I am sure Sentio will be able to do 50 ppm. So when Sentio refinery comes on board finally, I am sure it will resolve a lot of our problems because they have quality modern machines that will refine 50 ppm for our market. So that's my answer to the question. I would allow Abbas to talk about the levies and taxes that Dr. Asanfo wants clarification.
Each of them. Okay, thank you very much, Doc. Actually, if you realize, I didn't touch on all the levies on that slide because we didn't want to, because of time. But since you've asked, it's important that we explain them to you. So the energy debt recovery levy, is, the third debt recovery levy is part of it now. So before 2016, when the Energy Sector Levies Act was passed, we had the third debt recovery levy standing alone. So in 2015, when I was using the slide, so, okay. So in 2015, when the Energy Sector Recovery Levies was passed, actually what the Ministry of Finance did was restructure the taxes and levies in the energy sector. So now we have the third debt recovery levy as part of the energy debt recovery levy. Now what the government did was that it introduced the ESLA PLC. The ESLA PLC restructured all the debt in the energy sector. So the third debt which is being paid, which was owed actually, has been restructured under the ESLA PLC, and that bond is being used to offset the debt in the energy sector. Now the energy debt recovery levy is not just the third debt recovery levy alone. I mentioned earlier that when government was subsidizing petroleum products, government was not able to pay for the subsidies. So government owed BDCs at the time that this was introduced. Also, there were exchange rate losses that were incurred. So all these debt that government owed, including the third debt recovery levy, were put together and named the Energy Debt Recovery Levy. So like I mentioned, when you take a copy of the Energy Sector Levies Act, you will see each of the levies there and what their uses are. So maybe just to explain, if you see the special petroleum tax, that one goes directly into the government pool. It doesn't have a specific use. The road fund levy goes to the road fund secretariat to support government maintenance of our road network. It has always been there before even the ESLA was introduced. And then we have the energy fund levy, which supports the energy commission's work. So energy commission comes up with various energy policies for government, and therefore they have various sources of funding. And the energy fund levy is one of those sources of funding. And then the price stabilization and recovery levy, which I've already explained. The sanitation and pollution levy was introduced in 2021. Government introduced this to help with the sanitation projects in the country. Then Doc asked about the energy sector recovery levy. So this didn't come out of the third debt recovery levy. This is a different levy. It also came in 2021. Government introduced this levy to pay for the excess capacity in the energy sector. So there were some excess production, particularly in the power sector. So government was looking for ways to pay for that debt, and therefore it introduced this energy sector recovery levy to pay for that. Also, this has also been explained in the Energy Sector Recovery Act. To answer another question, Doc asked that, are we not shortchanging consumers, or are we not ripping consumers off through MPA because fuel is inelastic? Okay, another Prof asked that. Yes, so like we said, taxes and levies of petroleum on petroleum products are not introduced by MPA. They go to Parliament. Government has to justify why it wants to introduce those taxes and levies, just like any other tax or levy in the country. And once Parliament debates it and passes it, then we for MPA, our work is to ensure that the price product that is used by our PSPs, our petroleum service providers, have these taxes in them. In elasticity of a petroleum product, we all know, yes, we don't have a choice, we don't have a choice, but I think government is very concerned about this. One thing you need to know is that even though government has the power to introduce taxes and levies, they always engage us and see the impact of introducing some of these taxes and levies on petroleum products before they introduce them. So it's not as if they just get up and introduce the taxes without any form of consultation. So that's the response to that. Government is not deliberately introducing taxes because the product is inelastic. If you introduce too much taxes and consumers change their consuming behavior, consumption will drop and you may not even get the money that you intend to raise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think first one of question from my angle was the premise coloration. It's still ongoing. Premise is blue. But in addition to the color, for instance, in the past, when it was still colored, adulteration was still high until we introduced the marking, where we add the marker. If you recall, I said that we have two different modes of quality assurance. One is the testing, and other is the marker, where we introduce a biological marker into the premix. So when you add that premix to petrol, and we go to the retail outlet, our machine will detect the premix marker, and straight away the fuel is seized and disposed of. So that is, so we've actually added another layer to the coloration to ensure quality assurance. The other question has to do with our interface between NPA and GSA. Actually, Ghana Standard Authority primarily sets standards, including the petrol standards I referred to. So, for instance, diesel, we have GS 141-2022, which is the current standard for diesel. Previously, it was GS 141-2017, which we amended to get the 2022. All the standards are supposed to, in fact, are actually done by GSA. The regulator, as MPA, now uses the standards to enforce. But historically, because NPA used not to exist, so if you saw my slide intro, I made mention of the history where fuel monitoring was actually done by GSA when before MPA came to be established. And when we were established and didn't have the capacity, we formed partnership to do the monitoring. But the regulation of the fuel quality and all aspect of it is the sole mandate of the MPA. The GSA sticker you see there is to certify that they have calibrated the pump and that the pump is delivering accurate quantities. So when we go, even with that one, we will verify to see whether indeed the pump is delivering according to the certification.
I want to address two other questions which I forgot to. There was one about why do we hear about fuel price changes from COPEC and not MPA. I think it's very important we mention this. Now, MPA is the regulator. Before July 2015, when we did price regulation, MPA sets the price and announces the prices. Under price regulation, I think I showed you one of the graphs that had different prices for different companies. MPA does not set the price and announce. Even though we also do our price projections, we don't announce our projections. Because if MPA should announce our price projections, it will inform or influence the market. So we play a supervisory role. And that's why I said that before every company publishes their price, they submit their indicative price but up to us, for us to ensure that that price that they are putting out there has followed the prescribed petroleum pricing formula so that consumers are not cheated. As for COPEC and any other person, you can decide that I want to project price and talk about them. IES does the same. Sometimes other people also do the same. But usually when they do that, monitor and see whether what they say is really what happens. The market is deregulated. You don't have influence over what a particular marketer may use in setting its price. So whatever you do is just speculation or projection. So we do the price monitoring and ensuring that the price they have put out there is in line with the formula. That's why MPA does not announce our price projections. I also showed you the daily price indicators. Broadly, the prices are influenced by the world market price and the exchange rate. So those daily price indicators that we publish in the newspapers on a daily basis and on our website is to inform consumers about what is the price are likely to be based on what the key factors are, which is the world market price and the exchange rate. But we don't publish the actual pump price because the prices vary from company to company. Almost all the different companies have a different price. So you cannot announce a price. So COPEC, what they do is just a projection to say what is likely to happen. And they actually look at the numbers we publish, that's the daily price indicators, to also make their projections. And then one thing that is, when someone asks about the protection for the pipelines, the pipelines that are used under the EPPF for the distribution, I think if you look at the one from Bupe to Bolga, it is very safe. It has always been safe. Nothing has happened to it. Up to today, when products are being moved from Bupe to Bolga for re-exports and other distribution, it goes through that pipeline. So it is safe. There were issues with the pipeline from Akosombo for Tema to Akosombo, the Mami Water Depot. And we used to have people punching holes into that pipeline and attacking it. And therefore, for a very long time, it was inactive. But just in May, the boss has worked on that pipeline. They have fixed it and they tested it in May. So it's functioning now. They've added security and other measures to ensure that the pipeline is safe for use. The reason why we need the pipelines to work is that it's cheaper transporting petroleum products through the pipelines. And therefore, we have to get our pipelines working and the barges also working. So BOS has put in place some security measures to make sure that these pipelines, particularly the Tema to Akosombo pipeline, that it is working very well. Thank you very much.
So I'll take the last two questions. Said mentioned not just quality but quantity as well. I think that we haven't mentioned that if you feel that you have been cheated in regard to quantity, also it is MPA that addresses that. And to let you know, at every filling station they have a 10-liter can there, that if you are giving fuel and you feel that you've been shortchanged in terms of the quantity, tell them that you challenge their what shall I call it, their measurement, and you want them to use the 10-liter marker for you, 10-liter can for you to see. And so they would dispense into the 10-liter can, and if it is exactly 10 liters, then you know that you were not cheated. You can do that challenge there, and they are mandated to use the can to verify for you to see. Okay, so that is also there. Then what we haven't also mentioned is that from what Said has said, therefore, all the 192 OMCs, well, it is not all of them who lift every week. Typically, you would have about 30 to 40 OMCs that have lifted petroleum product for the month. I want to say that quality for every OMC is the same. So, AMSA, Petrosol, Goil, Energy, Essence, whatever, please don't bother about quality. I hear people saying, hey, to free how? To free way. It's not true. There are no distinctions in petroleum quality in the country. Like Said has said, right from when the fuel has come into the country, we follow the quality processes all the way to the pumps. So there's no difference. And I deliberately, I don't buy from the big boys. And when I say big boys, I mean Shell, Goil, etc. And deliberately, when I go to buy fuel, and mostly I drive myself in Accra, I lower my glasses so that when I'm buying the fuel from AMSA, from Petrosol, people see that the MPA boss is buying from AMSA, so that they can have the confidence that, therefore, it means the quality. So I deliberately avoid Shell, Goil, and the rest, so that I buy from the others for people to see that you can buy fuel from every filling station. The quality is the same. Selling fuel in barrels, of course, that is prohibited. Let's be fair. OMCs are businesses. They've been set up to make profit. So they will only site their filling stations in places where they can make money. So they don't want to go to certain rural communities. And so we have agreed that in very remote areas, we will allow this hand pump, I don't know how some people call it gao, whatever. You know, we allow that in very remote areas, not in urban communities. As for jerrycan, of course, we can never license people to sell fuel in jerrycans, but we do give authorization to the Gao Gao people to operate in very remote areas where vehicles have to go and convey food products to the cities and would also require fuel. Professor Grant says that people are beginning to get away from diesel and so on, and then if they switch off their engines, it will be dumped on Africa and so on. Well, the world has given itself up to when? Some say 2030, some say, but at the COP conferences that happen every year, Ghana has made its position very clear, and for many other countries, that we give ourselves up to 2050, between 2050 to 2070, to transition fully. We will not be ready to transition. And our presidents in Africa have made that point clear. Look, the United States has been exploiting fossil fuels for over 200 years. Ghana just started exploiting its hydrocarbon resources in first oil was 2011. 2011 was first oil. And then within 10 years, 20 years of exploiting our resources, you say we should shut them down and leave our resources stranded in the belly of the earth. We are not going to leave our resources stranded in the belly of the earth. We are going to exploit all of our resources. In any event, when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, you saw Joe Biden, President of America, has issued new licenses and orders for exploitation of resources. Many countries went back to using coal and so on and so forth. So even the Western countries, it is not as if they have committed fully to getting away from the use of fossil fuels within the next 5-10 years and so on. Having said that, I must say that yes, Ghana has a transition plan. MPA is represented on the Energy Transition Committee. We have our transition documents ready. Like we have said, we've given ourselves between 2050 to 2070 to transition. We are doing everything possible. We are working with Ministry of Transport to begin licensing electric car charging points. There are about 2 or 3 charging points now in Accra. So electric car charging points are coming up. When we stop LPG filling station concept, we would only leave LPG filling points for filling auto gas. That's for vehicles that will use LPG as fuel. Those are the ones we would allow to pay. So we're also encouraging many cars, like I said, gas is the transition fuel, to transition from petrol and diesel to the use of gas, powering our motor vehicles until such a time that we are able to transition fully. In my opinion, this will be all of the points that I have captured. Thank you very much.
At this point, time is fast spent, so we want to withhold the question and then move on with the program. We would want to take a few words from Professor Komichireme, who is the Provost Rep, to give us just a few words from the Provost.
Thank you very much. I don't really have much to say than to indicate that it's been a very educative lecture for me. Many a times we assume that we know a lot about what is happening, but it appears we don't really know much. And I will urge the faculty to continue to, of course, engage others for such programs. Thank you very much.
So we invite Professor Safo Kantanka to give us the chairman's closing remarks. Thereafter, Sheikh Mohammed Abdul Mumin, you prepare and give us the closing prayer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I must say that, well, I'm the happiest person today. Well, the first test has passed. So the numbers you mentioned, somebody decided to test and see, and they were through. So you see, so actually, you can, my good friend, you can always call. Okay, that's very important. Thank you. Yes, as I said, I'm very happy. Dr. Abdul Hamid, we thank you and your team for coming, and I think that anybody who has stayed here today hasn't regretted being here. We've learned a lot. As Professor Grant said, you must thank our students in these numbers, especially at this time of the day when some are standing up trying to follow the program up to the end. We thank you so much for being here, and we assure you that we will continue to render services for you. The Town and the Town lecture series has begun, and we can assure you that we are going to continue up to the point that we all benefit from it. So thank you very much. And I'll also say that, you see, Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid, we thank you once again, because this is not the only thing you are doing for us. Not long ago, you gave us some items, about 20 computers, about 10 printers, about 5 or so tool scanners and workstation equipment to the Department of Religion and Human Values. So you see, and of course, I'll be Oliver Twist. Maybe later we will come knocking on your door, seeking more from you. So thank you, everybody. I'm not going to summarize anything. Everybody has said everything. This is technical. In any attempt to try to summarize anything, you go and say, Professor Kwasai I will treat it. So thank you very much once again.
One of my very good friends, Ofata, he teaches concert. Where is he? Ofata? So I acknowledge the presence of my very good friend Ofata. He's a lecturer in concert. Give him a hand. Give him a hand. So, well, that's just, by the way, I'm always happy to be in UCC. I said it on my graduation day when I was getting my PhD, that if I come back to the world again, I would attend UCC. I would attend UCC. So, thank you very, very much for the audience and the support. In our time, it was not like this. It's not easy to get students to fill a hall when the subject is intellectual. When we came in at first, people were trickling. I told chairman, I'm say, that's what I said to him in Key. But there has been no Shatawale, and then you have filled the auditorium. Please give your house a big hand of appreciation. I hope that as the Town and Gown series continue, you would continue to patronize it like this. Because I told the students at the job fair, I beg you, that 80% of everything you would learn in life, you would learn it outside course outlines. Course outline would only give you 10 to 20% of your store of knowledge. If you want to be a really good human being, then you must always read things that have nothing to do with your courses. Anything and everything. If you are coming to see Dean and they say he's in a meeting, you don't need to be upset. Just sit cool, fold your legs, take the nearest magazine on his waiting table and start reading. That's all. You are reading for leisure. You will not be bored. Your temperature won't go high. You and then by the time you finish, sometimes when I go to wait for people, Dr. Sanford, finally I'm now praying that the man shouldn't even finish the meeting because I'm reading something and I haven't finished and I want to get to the end of it. Knowledge is the only way that we can change our society. The world is now a knowledge-based society. Ghana should not be left out. Thank you very much.
So, Honorable Hamid, we want to appreciate you with a citation. So, Hall of Fame.
Well, let me say that this thing that he just said, that waiting for somebody to finish a meeting, you just pick a magazine to read whilst waiting, I learned it from him some time ago. So it's good. As he said, we used to have our BPs going out. You wait and wait and wait. Doc, on behalf of the Faculty of Arts, we present to you this citation. Of course, we are going to open it for you to see the words in there. We appreciate your coming, the knowledge you've shared with us, and what you've been doing for us. Thank you so much. I'll read it, right? All right. Okay. So, Doc, here you are. Citation in honor of Honorable Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid, CEO, National Petroleum Authority. There's a quote here. If your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader, unquote. Dolly Parton. The Gown and the Town series is delighted to honor you for your remarkable altruism, contributions, and initiative towards the conceptualization of this forum at the Faculty of Arts, University of Cape Coast. Your candidness, enthusiasm, and zest for academic excellence reflect in your passion of always looking out for new ways to engage both faculty and students. As an incredible Gemini and a perfectionist, you never hesitate to lend a helping hand, offer advice, and show unconditional love to all. As we celebrate this maiden edition of the Town and the Gown series, we say we appreciate your presence and your commitment to linking industry and academia. It will remain a memorable day in our hearts and minds forever. May the Almighty Allah, the most gracious and merciful, bless you, your family, and your endeavors. Thank you. Salam alaikum.
So we invite Sheikh Mohammed Abdul Mumin for the closing prayer. Let's give him a round of applause as he mounts the pulpit.
Walaikum salam. You say Ameen after me. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Just a quick one. I think that somebody left the links here. All right.